With the release of DC's census data, DC residents now have a better idea of what their community looks like as a whole. Karina Stenquist joins us with a look at the political concerns of one growing segment of the DC population. Karina, thank you.
Thanks, Dan. Everyone's talking about the growth of the Latino population reflected in last year's census. I recently visited one young man who, for many, represents what some are seeing as the start of a new era for DC's Latinos. Census statistics show that the Latino population in DC is booming, particularly the younger demographic. Getting Latinos into DC politics, however, has been a slow process. Josh Lopez is trying to break through. The 26-year-old son of Guatemalan immigrants and former Adrian Fenty campaigner is running for the at-large seat on the DC City Council.
If I would win, I'd be the first elected Latino on City Council. You know, historically, we've been a population, it's been ignored when it comes to electoral politics for whatever reason. So it would essentially make history here in DC if I'd win.
At a recent forum in Columbia Heights, Lopez and other at-large candidates addressed the Latino community. Their biggest concern? Education. Latinos are about 9% of the overall DC population, but they're one of the fastest growing and youngest, making up 12% of the school-age population. That's why Lopez says education is a priority.
There's a lack of bilingual educators. You know, the ESL programs are consistently underfunded. Issues particularly facing the Latino community aren't being supported.
But community organizer and voter Germán Vigil talks about the need for a cultural shift.
And I think that we as Latinos now place our work ethics over our educational values. And I think that that's our biggest downfall as Latino population.
Lopez is optimistic that these issues will get a better hearing in the future in DC.
You know, the demographic of Latinos is exploded. You will see more Latinos in the political arena. So I think we're just finally coming to bloom.
The special election for the at-large seat on City Council takes place on April 26th. Lopez is one of 9 candidates for the seat, and if elected, he would also be the youngest council member in DC history at just 26 years old. Now, joining me in the studio is Linda Mancias from American University School of Public Affairs, who teaches government as well as Latino and gender studies. Thank you so much for coming out today.
Thank you for having me.
The first thing I wanted to ask, on a sort of a general note, is what do you think are the obstacles for political organizing among Latinos in DC and in the country as a whole?
Yes, sure. Well, you know, our Latino population is very, very diverse. It's very, very fragmented. We have Dominicans, we have San Salvadorians, we have Guatemalans, we have Mexicans. So we have this group of people who have different country of origins. And so this makes their uniting them or coming together very hard to try to get them to come together. Now, having said that, there are certain issues, of course, that we can unite around. Education definitely is one of them. Housing is another one. And jobs is, of course, number 3. So there are issues that concern the Latino community. However, you have to understand too, we have a very large immigrant population. This immigrant population can't vote. So we have, that there's a problem here in terms of how our political power can be utilized.
You brought up education, and that was definitely the sort of #1 topic discussed at this forum on Saturday. But people seem to speak of it in sort of general terms, knowing it's important, right? More funding for this, more funding for bilingual education, more bilingual educators. But on a local level, like what's a concrete thing that someone like a DC City Council member could do to further educational needs for the Latino community?
Well, let's first talk about what brings the Latinos to DC. DC is a very welcoming place for immigrants and for Latinos and for minorities. So you have a population here where our government here in DC doesn't go hunting down people who want to work, okay? Doesn't want to go to schools and see, who's a citizen and who's not. So what our elected officials have done in the past is build coalitions together to try to improve the area, try to improve education here. And Lopez is one of them. He's Latino, but he has to build a coalition with African Americans and with the white community to further these issues.
Okay. On sort of a larger note, Latino growth is one of the biggest stories coming out of the census.
Right.
One of the stats that gets thrown around is people are saying that if it follows this trend in 2050, 1/3 of the nation will be Latino. And what I'm wondering is Is this possible fuel for a backlash for people who have like an anti-immigrant, anti-Latino agenda to fuel sort of, they often use rhetoric of invasion?
Certainly it can be. I'm an example, though, of what we call the new Latino or the new Latina. My mother is Scot-Irish, which is Western European. My father's from a Mexican American. So whenever we talk about Latinos or Hispanics, who are we talking about? We're talking about people like me. We're talking about what the media and what Hispanic issues tend to do is say they're foreigners from different countries, Well, you have to think, where did the Latino population come from? From the Southwest, from Mexico. 69% of our immigrants are Mexican. Well, they were here before the Mayflower, okay? So let's talk about these issues here. So it's a political rhetoric that needs to be addressed by very, very strong leaders who will take on this issue, and because of the growing population, our younger Latinos are going to end up voting down the line. We have to pay attention to these voters that are coming along.
Okay. We're going to listen really quick to a clip from that same forum of another candidate, Brian Weaver, and he spoke about a proposal to let legal residents who may not be citizens vote in local elections, at least, like for ANCs. So let's hear what he has to say about that.
We are a city of immigrants. The thing that makes character Washington, D.C. so important is that we have so many Ethiopians and Vietnamese, Salvadorans, Guatemalans that live within the community. We really have to make everybody feel that they're a part of that.
So when he says it, it sounds very straightforward.
Yeah.
But what do you think, what's your opinion of the importance or the feasibility of that?
Well, there's a problem with it. I mean, American politics basically has been based on the citizen, the citizen voter. This is where our country's been basically based on. So it's going to be a hard road to have anybody else other than citizens voting in the United States.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for coming today.
Thank you.
All right, back to you, Dan.
Thank you very much, Karina. Coming up, who's the next senator from Virginia? The answer may affect national politics for some time to come. We'll have an early look at one of the most important political races in the country. And American University is getting bigger. As plans start to move forward, many in the neighborhood are outraged. We have an exclusive interview with one of the plan's architects. Stay tuned for that and more after the break.